I'm Mudar Pratap Singh. You're joining us on this special show on NewsX. Today we are marking the 32nd anniversary of one of the most shocking yet significant events of the 20th century. The brutal Tiananmen Square massacre. Yes, on this day in 1989, Chinese tanks and heavily armed troops marched towards the square, crushing one of the most widespread agitations to have taken place in the People's Republic of China. The unfortunate reality is that the party in power then continues to be in power today, perhaps stronger than ever. Yes, CCP's belligerence and crackdowns continue to rise every passing day. And in fact, it sits on the occupied land and suppresses local population culturally, religiously, politically, economically, as well as ethically. Today with us on this broadcast are voices from these territories who are speaking out against this continuous oppression, demanding justice for their people. We will be discussing on this broadcast with our guests from these lands and experts how Tiananmen continues to be relevant today and how CCP is crushing dissent even today. Is there a rising discontent in China? Is a seventh front war in China now becoming an inevitable possibility? And if yes, will the people of PRC back Xi Jinping still? Joining us on this special broadcast is Dr Ming-Chi Che, Associate Professor of Sociology and Center for Contemporary China, National, Tsinghua University, Taiwan. We also have Mr. Enghebatu Togochog joining us live, President, Southern Mongolian Human Rights Information Center. Mr. Babur Ilchi is live with us, Program Director, Campaign for Uyghurs, US. We also have Ms. Lhagyari Namgyal Dolkar joining us live, Member of Parliament, Tibetan Government in Exile. And Mr. Teng Biao is joining the panel as well, Chinese human rights lawyer and Posen visiting professor, University of Chicago, United States of America. Thank you all very much for being with us today. Let me begin with you.
Thank you.
Dr. Ming-Chi Che. Now, Dr. Chen, your thoughts
Yes.
on this anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, what your message really is on this day, and do you believe that China is continuing to adopt these oppressive policies vis-a-vis the people of Taiwan, Tibet, and many others, even today?
Yes. Oh well, it's on a daily basis. We are China's neighbor. Although PRC has never ruled Taiwan for a day, they still claim that Taiwan be a part of China, and they threat the people of Taiwan to retake Taiwan if necessary by force. That's why they send the aircraft to invade in our airspace and send a naval ship to circle Taiwan. We feel the threat, and that's what makes the people of Taiwan more sympathetic to the people being oppressed by PRC, by the Chinese Communist Party, in no matter it's in Tibet, in Mongolia, and in East Turkestan. So feel sympathetic. And also this day is very significant in Taiwan too. We are probably the only place who can commemorate this day freely. We have a lot of ceremony in Taiwan. Taiwan is the only place, the only Chinese-speaking society who are allow the freedom to commemorate those people who sacrifice to pursue democracy and freedom in China. Hong Kong used to be the place who had a very big ritual in the evening of July 4th every year. And they're getting bigger and bigger. But unfortunately, this event had been brutally suppressed by the Hong Kong government on behalf of the Chinese Communist Party since they established the national security law last year. So the situation is dire in this. It become more. I think they were very brutal. In 1989, they are getting even more repressive.
Yes.
Not only toward their own people, but to its neighbor, to India, to Nepal, and also to Taiwan and Japan and South Korea too. So I think it's only towards some people, not even to the occupied territory of Tibet. It's Turkestan, southern Mongolia, but also extend to its neighbor in this region. So it's like the China threat is regional and beyond, and also is on the global scale. So I think that the world have to wake up to this new threat of the global stability.
Absolutely. No, what you've said is very valid indeed, and we appreciate your words on Tiananmen. Talking very quickly about Taiwan, sir, do you believe these oppressive policies continue today against the Taiwanese people? And it's just become even more apparent in this year that has gone by, in which Taiwan has been dealing with the virus, but yet also dealing with China's aggression and oppressive policies in the last year and a half. Dr. Che.
Absolutely. Just as Taiwan people need the vaccine the most, and China has used every possibility way to block our access to the necessary vaccine, and that's quite frustration. And also at the same time, they continue their military invasion into the Taiwan's airspace and also the water territory. At the same time, they are good at launch the disinformation campaign, or we call the cognitive warfare against Taiwanese people. They sort of in every healthy democracy there should be different opinion, but they are so good at utilize this sort of difference, disagreement, and enlarge it and polarize it. So we are facing this kind of hybrid threat from China. I think people in India must feel sort of have a very similar feeling toward China too. They are not only use the military force against the Indian people, but also the other disinformation campaign. That is the worst. And not to mention that now many scientists are begin to go through the fact about the possibility of this virus, this pandemic, the virus, the COVID-19 that caused the global, was originated from in China. So I think CCP, Communist Party, is a threat to its neighbor. It's a threat to its loving people.
Okay. Stay with us, sir. Let me bring in Mr. Enghebatu Togochog as well at this point. Sir, your thoughts on the Tiananmen anniversary today, and do you believe the China of 1989 and the China of 2021, the aggression in the Chinese have remained the same, but what is one difference that you believe has changed, if any, for the better or actually for the worse? Mr. Chok.
Thank you for having me. I'm a Mongolian from Chinese-occupied southern Mongolia. What we are dealing with today is the Chinese regime which is extremely brutal in nature. To the Chinese people, this regime is a domestic regime of oppressive and authoritarian nature. To the Southern Mongolians, Tibetans, and Uyghurs, this is a foreign occupation. To the rest of the world, this regime is an existential threat to the universal value of democracy, freedom, and human rights. As you know, today is the 32nd anniversary of Tiananmen Square massacre. The government of China opened fire on its own citizens, killing thousands of unarmed students. But if you look back at the history of the Chinese regime, this is just the tip of the iceberg. In Southern Mongolia alone, China committed at least 2 major genocides since 1949. The first one is a physical genocide carried out in the late 1960s and early 1970s, killing at least 100,000 Mongolians and persecuted 500,000. The second one is a cultural genocide that is taking place in southern Mongolia as we speak. The purpose of this round of genocide is clear. Wipe out Mongolian language, culture, identity from southern Mongolia entirely to create a homogeneous Chinese society that is free from any ethnic problem. The ongoing cultural genocide has started in southern Mongolia last September with the implementation of the so-called second generation bilingual education to ban Mongolian language education entirely and replace the Mongolian with the Chinese as the medium of instruction across southern Mongolia. In response to this new round of cultural genocide, almost the entire southern Mongolian population rose up to protest. More than 300,000 students took to the street, and millions of parents and teachers and students carried out the general school boycott. And the immediate response of the Chinese government is a heavy-handed crackdown. An estimated 8,000 to 10,000 protesters have been arrested, detained, and sent to jail. So what followed this mass arrest and brutal crackdown is a wholesale cultural genocide in the name of inculcation of the sense of Chinese nationality, common identity. A region-wide intensive so-called training program started, targeting all Mongolian teachers, students, parents, even party members, government officials, and even ordinary herders. One of the campaign slogans is "Learn Chinese and become a civilized person." These slogans are repeatedly aired through all TV and radio broadcasts across southern Mongolia. In the past few months, the scope of the campaign has expanded to destroy Mongolian cultural objects, historical sites, and removing anything that has Mongolian characteristics from streets and buildings. So theoretical backing of this campaign is the so-called second generation ethnic policy that is publicly stating to wipe out individual ethnic identity of all so-called 55 ethnic minorities and impose the so-called Zhonghua nationality common identity. So before I wrap up, I'd like to also highlight that Chinese problem is no longer just a problem of domestic oppression or the occupation of southern Mongolia, Tibet, or East Turkestan.
Yeah.
It is a global issue impacting the well-being of the entire humanity. It is safe to say today there's no single nation on our planet is free from Chinese attempt for political interference and economic exploitation. If you look at Africa, Central and South America are gradually becoming de facto colonies of China. The Belt and Road Initiative countries are lured into the CCP's death trap, and that is starting to threaten their national sovereignty. Shanghai Cooperation Organization, for example, is placing Asian countries under the Chinese domination. Territorial expansion and military aggression are increasingly flagrant. The free and democratic world, including the United States, is under the threat of CCP's criminal activities, including stealing of intellectual properties, cyber attack, money laundering, and numerous other illegal economic and financial activities. So it's really time for the whole world to unite together to confront this unprecedented challenge to humanity. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your opening comments. I'll come back to you later. Babur Ilchi, coming to you at this point. Babur, your thoughts on Tiananmen, the significance of this anniversary being observed even in 2021, Mr. Ilchi, and also, how China has not changed despite the outrage over the years. China has not changed. Sir.
So, Tiananmen Square massacre was an absolute tragedy. And to see all these pro-democracy students fighting for their rights be killed for trying to exercise those rights is a tragedy, and one that should have been taken more seriously when it happened in 1989. What we've seen since is that the CCP has had no respect for human rights, no respect for human dignity. And in regards to the Uyghurs specifically, what we've seen is a massive crackdown on human rights for the Uyghurs, with numerous protests, peaceful protests from Uyghurs being cracked down. And the 2009 Urumqi massacre comes to mind in this situation, which resulted in a huge violation of human rights in East Turkestan. Today, what we're seeing is nothing short of genocide, with over 3 million Uyghurs locked up in camps or imprisoned, tortured, sexually abused, assaulted, and yes, many have died. The situation has become dire, and what we're seeing is that the CCP is refusing to hold themselves accountable and refusing to acknowledge what they're doing. And this has been the case, and this has been their strategy for decades now. The international community needs to be taking action like they should have taken action in 1989 when those protesters in Tiananmen Square were killed. And today, of course, is the 32nd anniversary and also the beginning of the Uyghur Tribunal, which is this huge independent people's inquiry into what the CCP is doing. And so there's a sort of symbolization of the Uyghur Tribunal that it starts on the day of the anniversary of Tiananmen Square to represent an inquiry and to uplift truth and justice where it was not shown, where it was hidden, and where the CCP tried to hide their misdeeds in the shadows. We're bringing it to light today.
Yeah, and do you believe, Babur, that vis-a-vis the Uyghurs, vis-a-vis the Mongolians that have been spoken about, the Taiwanese, the Chinese attitude has not changed, despite this Tibet, of course, we've just come to with Lhagyari, but the fact is the Chinese attitude of oppression, of domination, of aggression has not changed, despite the world's outrage and condemnation, hasn't it, Babur?
It hasn't. And in fact, I would say that since Xi Jinping became the chairman of China and the CCP party leader, it has become increasingly worse. And we can see that especially with the appointment of people like Chen Chuangguo to the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region. And he was the architect behind the crackdowns and the oppression in Tibet. And he has brought those strategies into East Turkestan and amplified them to this situation that is genocide, is nothing short of an attempt to eradicate an entire people.
Okay, Lhagyari Dolkar, let me come to you next. Your thoughts on this special show as we observe the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. What would you like to say on this occasion? What really was conveyed through that Chinese Act in 1989 and the relevance of it even till today?
Well, Uday, I want to begin by offering my solidarity with my Chinese brothers and sisters, especially the Tiananmen survivors who courageously stood up to demand freedom and democracy for China. And I think it's a reminder for the entire world to show the brutality that the Chinese Communist Party is capable of. When we are talking about the brutality against the heavy-handed crackdown against a peaceful protest by the Tibetans or Uyghurs, brothers and sisters, or the Southern Mongolians, I think what we saw in Tiananmen clarifies what China is capable of. How the Chinese Communist Party, if they can't have a little bit of sympathy for their own Han race, what can they possibly be looking at us as? And I think that's the reason why I always remind the world, especially being in India, my Indian brothers and sisters, this is the real face of Chinese Communist Party and the leadership of Xi Jinping. And what he can do if this is his face. If this is the face of the CCP's leadership to their own people, and even today, the Chinese in mainland China are demanding democracy, freedom even through, say, the work of art, how they are suppressed, how their voice of dissent is cracked down, is a message to the entire world. And of course, we know what's happening in Tibet and in Turkestan and Southern Mongolia. So yes, I wouldn't want, we wouldn't need to further clarify, and we know what kind of intimidation tactic and hegemony China is carrying out with Taiwan and India and all the the countries in Asia Pacific. So yes, this is the real face of CCP, and if we ought to stand up as free and equal nations, we ought to speak up. We can't be taking what CCP is offering us, that we all have to accept one China policy. No, we can't accept it. I think we have to speak up. And I would say, being in India, I would say India will have to speak up. Let CCP know, let Xi Jinping know that, we're not going to accept one China policy, because that one China policy will be gradually heavy upon the rest of the free nations, like it is upon us.
Okay. And do you believe that, Lhagyari, you've been campaigning for the Tibetan cause for so many years. The world has taken up the cause of Tibet, but yet China's policies have not changed. Yet China has not woken up to react and realize the ground realities. What do you make of this? And do you believe that China has learned no lessons? This is the same Chinese attitude that existed in 1989. It can exist in 2021 as well. They won't blink twice before crushing another Tiananmen Square-like agitation even this year. Do you believe?
Oh, absolutely. I can't, to be honest, at this time in 2021, I can't right now imagine this sort of massive protest against China. We have seen, the protests like Tiananmen in Tibet. We saw it replicated in Turkestan, in Southern Mongolia as well, in Tibet in 2008 and 9. We have seen that all. And we've seen how those were cracked down. And, I cannot imagine, first of all, that level of protest being coming up. And I think that is the reason why right now we are looking at, the kind of the massive protest turning into, solidarity protest. Less and less people are coming out. Like in Tibet, we're looking at Tibetans burning themselves. More than 157 Tibetans have burned themselves. So this is what is, the mode to protest is changing. And also, I think it's important we look into the fact that, we must not completely neglect that the pressure from the international community is not coming on China. Because many times we tell ourselves that, no, China is becoming stronger, the Chinese Communist Party, Xi Jinping, their crackdown is getting larger than ever. But we must know that the kind of pressure that international community can bring upon China, we must not give up. We must know that, the Tibetans in Tibet, Uyghurs in Turkestan and South Mongolians, we will continue to speak up. Even our Chinese brothers and sisters in mainland China, they will continue to speak up against their brutality. And therefore, the international community, with their support, I truly, genuinely believe that there can be a change. And we must know that, China can't be standing on their own and become the world leader that they want to become by being alone, by being isolated. So it's a matter of the international community not just being sympathetic, but being action-oriented. They must come out, they must speak. And, I think most of the time I'm looking at nations saying they are sympathetic. Yes, we really appreciate their sort of support, but what can be done beyond that? Currently, we're looking at nations like United States coming out with strong policies of reciprocity against China, and we want those sort of policies to be replicated, to be amplified in different nations, including India as well. So this is the only way of challenging China. This is the only way of letting China know that we know what you're doing in Tibet. We know what you're doing with your own people in China. And we are not going to accept that. Hence, if you are in any way, ethical or, deserving of a strong seat in the United Nations, you must be answerable. You must be answerable to the atrocities that you are committing. So yes, this is the way that we can speak up and come up as equal. And my only hope is that the people of India will be able to reach out to the Indian leadership. Let them know that it's time that India speaks up too. As a Tibetan, I'm most grateful towards government of India for the support that we have received, especially the fact that our exiled Tibetan government is established in India. But I think it's time that India takes stronger steps. India must acknowledge, like I said earlier, one China policy rejected. Let the world know that this is one way. Why can't India be exemplary? I think this is one way of showing all of us, the panel speakers, that yes, India stands strong against the brutality of Chinese Communist Party and Xi Jinping. This is one and the first step to go ahead with. That's what I would say.
Okay, let me quickly go across at this point to Mr. Teng Biao as well. Welcome, sir. Thank you for also taking time out. Mr. Biao, your thoughts on this anniversary telecast of Tiananmen Square. What would you like to say on this occasion? What are the lessons learned, the ramifications of that incident, which still reverberate even in the world of today in 2021?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you to other panelists. In 1989, Chinese government used the tanks and the machine guns to crush the peaceful democracy movement, and that's a shock to the world. But for the past 3 decades, there's another shock that is China's economic miracle. And the two things are interrelated. Because of the Tiananmen Massacre, because of the so brutal suppression, and the Chinese government deprived Chinese people of its fundamental human rights and freedom, and seemed that no one can challenge that one-party rule. So and then the Chinese government adopted the excuse me, the so-called socialist market economy, and so the China miracle, one of the most, there are many reasons to explain the China's rapid economic growth. But one thing that many have ignored is the so-called low human rights advantage. Because there's no independent trade union, the low wages, extremely low social welfare, and the low environmental protection. And then the Chinese products can be very, very cheap and very competitive. And then China was allowed to enter the World Trade Organization, and the Western companies, Western countries prioritized business over human rights or democratization. That's the reason, one of the most important reasons from the China miracle. And then, as all my fellow panelists pointed out, China has become an increasing direct threat to liberal international order. So the two things are interrelated. But I will say the world, especially the Western democracies, should re-examine their policy towards China. Only 17 days after the Tiananmen Massacre, the American President George H.W. Bush sent a secret letter to the butcher Deng Xiaoping, and then later he sent a secret envoy to Chinese to meet Deng Xiaoping to show his goodwill. And then a few years in 1994, American President Bill Clinton granted China a most favored nation status and to delink human rights record to trade with China. I think it is time that the world think about the rise of China, the substantial threat from this regime, and it's not only human rights and rule of law are deteriorating after 1989, but also China has established what I call a high-tech totalitarianism. The government uses like DNA, artificial intelligence, facial recognition, social media, big data, all these kind of high-level modern technology to tighten its control on Chinese society. And if this kind of high-tech totalitarianism is strengthening, and then it's very, very difficult, if any, possible for the Chinese people to resist, to push forward a political change. And so in general, I think the world, India, United States, Europe, all the free countries have a responsibility to democratize China.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.